Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. I think it's going to be good evening in Cancun when this finally airs, or maybe good afternoon. Blair, what time is it where you are right now, by the way?
1 in the afternoon.
Are you in, where are you? Eastern time? Where are
I'm
you
in
located?
the central time zone. So
Ah,
I'm
okay.
Texas, right in the center of the US. So
Thank you for communicating with me in Eastern time, though, because I do find that one the easiest of all the time zones to negotiate in the US. We're here to primarily talk about Jessica Pegula, of course, up against Iga Swiatek in the WTA Finals final. I always find that a weird thing to say. And when you were
yeah,
doing it a year ago, Blair, when you said the WTA Finals final, was that unusual?
it was. I just had to sort of get used to it and plow through. It definitely sounded strange coming out of my mouth for sure.
Before we get into the match itself, I do want to sort of touch on a little bit on that. Of course, a year ago, you were there in the thick of the action in Fort Worth, not this year in Cancun. What have you made of some of the goings on in Mexico?
I think it's just really unfortunate for everyone involved, for the players. I know so many people who work in tennis who are on the op side of things, people who work in the WTA who this wasn't the goal. This is not what they would have hoped would have happened either. And I know that there are a lot of decisions behind the scenes that none of us know. And I wouldn't have wanted to be the one to try to make those decisions. But the outcome has unfortunately been not great for a lot of reasons, and you want the players to feel celebrated at the year-end event, and there's just the feeling that maybe they haven't exactly felt that, and that's really unfortunate.
Yeah, it's been building regarding a discontent among the players. But in hindsight, looking back, were there some clues that maybe this wasn't going to be a perfectly run event?
Well, I think just the fact that it got announced in a similar timeline to last year's WTA finals, that's what we were all hoping was going to be remedied in 2023. And again, the fact that that didn't happen, I'm sure there was a good reason for that. We have no idea what's happening behind the scenes, but that was the hope, that we didn't have this short lead up time. I think it's almost impossible to pull off an event like this to the level that the WTA would want to. It's the premier women's sport in the world in that short period of time. And I know that Fort Worth had some haters last year because we did have thin crowds at the very beginning. We also had a massive stadium. The stadium
Okay.
had a capacity of over 10,000, which was probably, and Steve Simon said it during the event, it's probably too big for the WTA finals. But honestly, by the end and by how pumped the fans were and engaged, even when we didn't have massive crowds, the crowds were very engaged in what was happening. And at the end, people were into it and excited and pumped. It just made me think that had there been a longer runway to promote it, maybe you could have filled up 10,000 seats. Who knows? It's an incredible product, and it's just a bummer to not see it get that billing as the incredible product that it is, sporting product.
Well, also perhaps as well, the tennis was a little bit better last year. Certainly some unbelievable matches. I remember speaking to you just under a year ago about Kazatkina Garcia, for example, but also the semi-final between Iga and Arena. And then the final itself was straight sets last year, but I remember it being a very high quality final. At times this year, there's been some very comfortable results, let's say, with straight sets, routine wins. What is your thought, though, regarding the upcoming match between Pegula and Swiatek? And before actually I get your thoughts on how that might play out and who might win and who might not, tell me about the two individuals. I mean, I guess you've spoken to both of them several times over the years.
Well, can I just say one quick note on the quality
Yeah.
of play? I, as somebody who hates playing tennis in the wind, I have wanted to cry for these players over
Yeah.
the past week. Not only the wind, but the breaks in play because of the rain. And of course, nobody can control that.
And
But
the music they can control. Did you see that?
I saw Maria Cicek's reaction to the music because of course
Yeah.
she was also in the chair for the infamous Cotton Eye,
Yes, yes.
which again, somebody, I think it was Sebastian on Twitter, Fashan. I'm sure I'm saying his last name wrong. I should get it right by now. But I think he said that the DJ has the chance to do something really hilarious today. I think maybe as long as Maria Cicak isn't in the chair. But yes, there have just been a lot of extenuating factors that have maybe led to the fact that it hasn't been the cleanest tennis. I don't think it would have been the cleanest tennis no matter who was out on the court. Okay, so to answer your question, circling back to what you asked,
no problem.
Jess and Iga, Jess Pegula is one of the most amazingly authentic professional athletes I have ever met. And that's not to say there aren't a lot of authentic people out there, but what you see is exactly what you get. If she's not in the best mood, she's probably just going to tell you, hey, it's a tough day. This may not be my best interview. And she would just tell you outright. She just has this level of, it's like an effortless coolness to her where she's just going to tell you like it is. And it's incredibly refreshing. I have really enjoyed getting to know her more. In particular, over the past year, she, Frances Tiafoe, when they were playing in United Cup at the beginning of the year, which has another tie into that Swiatek Pegula matchup. But Frances said, we all called her, well, I think Frances started it and maybe it took off from there, but called her the GOAT Pegula because everybody just genuinely loves her. She's a professional, an absolute pro in everything that she does. And she's just so level-headed on the court. She would be a player that would unnerve me if I were on the other side of the net because she just seems, I'm going to make this word up, but unruffleable.
We're full of making words up here, don't worry.
There you go. No, there are no rules here. But again, huge fan of sort of what she's been able to do without having to put on a personality that maybe isn't authentically her. She's done it her way and has become one of the biggest stars in the game, and you love to see it. And then on the Swiatek side of things, similar in a lot of ways, just much different seemingly personalities. I love that Iga, I feel like, has also found her voice in a way, hasn't been scared to say when she's bothered by something. She obviously has done amazing work off the court in support of the conflict in Ukraine. So multifaceted players, and I think really amazing representatives for women's tennis.
Right. The match itself, I'm really pleased that you touched on that United Cup match that they had at the beginning of the year, because that was a bit of a rude awakening, perhaps, certainly for Swiatek fans, if not for Swiatek herself. Perhaps the fast-paced court, Sydney, I think there was a bit of travel involved for Iga for that particular match, unlike Jessica Pegula. I think it would have been playing in Sydney for a little while before that. They've obviously played each other a few times as well. Where's it going to be won and lost, do you think? And stick your neck on the block if you can and give us some kind of a prediction.
Oh gosh. Well, the good news is if you've ever heard my predictions, whatever I say, you should probably think the opposite is going to happen.
You and me both. But the trick is, Blair, you only talk about your successes. You never talk about the failures.
There you go. Well, one thing that stuck out to me this week was, I believe it was Marketa Vondrousova describing the court. And she said, it's like a not great clay court or a bad clay court, something along those lines.
I can imagine Daniel Medvedev saying, I'm a hard court specialist on that particular court, and saying this is not a hard court.
That's exactly right. So, but it made me think, if that is indeed the case, I would think perhaps the advantage goes to Swiatek coming in. But a couple things that I was thinking about in terms of this matchup. One, I love that Iga has said, hey, listen, I think she wants that year-end number one. She wanted to play Sabalenka for the number one. She wanted it to be on the line. And I think that's the sign of a true champion, is wanting to have to go out and win it, not wanting it to sort of happen tangentially and be like, oh, wow, I'm number one in the world or whatever it is. So I love that she has that mindset. I think that's huge. Jessie just has ice in her veins. And that's not technical at all. They both can come in everybody likes, I mean, these are the things we all know. Everybody likes Swiatek's footwork. I haven't checked the weather today in Cancun. I don't know how windy it is. I think probably the more windy it is, the more that would favor Swiatek, just because she
Mm.
has a little more margin, or she has the ability to have a little bit more margin on her balls, and maybe put a little bit more spin on her balls. So if it's a windy day, I would say maybe the advantage goes to Swiatek. If not, I'm going to go Pegula. So my prediction is hinging on the weather report, Sean.
All right. Listen, I think it's going to be dry, but you never know. I think there might be a bit of wind, especially on the coast there in Mexico. There's one other thing that I wanted to do for him, because this, I'm fine with saying this is pre-recorded. It'll be going out just shortly, in the sort of 15-20 minutes before the match itself, Blair. But there's a couple of people, one of which is a regular on our show, Miles, and he said, "Oh, Blair's not going to be on WTA Weekly this week. That's a pity." And it's like, yeah, but we'll fix it. I said to him at the time, I said, we'll get on in a few weeks, don't worry. I didn't realize it would be within a couple of hours, actually, with this. The other is Nick as well, the host. It's like, okay, never mind. I'll speak to Blair some other time. So if you can just say hi to Miles.
Hi, Miles. I'm so sad that I missed you this time, and let's do it again. And same to Nick as well.
And same to Nick. Yeah, I was going to say, and say to Nick, I hadn't forgotten you, by the way. I was just going to do you as well. But Blair, listen, that's a huge, wonderful thing that you came on today. And I'm sure we'll cross paths again somewhere, somehow, quite possibly electronically. But Blair, by the way, if I do come across you, I do want you to, practice a bit more of your Spanish. I remember we were speaking via email recently, and you said, well, yeah, maybe I should learn some Spanish before I go to Cancun if it ever comes up again.
Well, as somebody who grew up in South Florida and decided to take French, it was a
Oh,
missed
okay.
opportunity, John. As much as I love the French language, it perhaps is not as helpful to me living in Florida and Texas for most of my life. But anyway, this is a joy. I'm sorry it's taken us 1 year to do this again, and I would love to do it again when I can actually watch some more of the tennis.
Blair, listen, we're quite busy, but we're not as busy as you. I think I sent you an email today as well, just asking you about your roll call of tournaments, and there was a lengthy list on there. And so we really appreciate your time. So thanks very much for coming on.
Thanks, guys. Awesome work as always.
Thanks, Blair.